judging?
No. I am not staying in this room.
Alright.
Sorry.
Fair enough.
Like, I'll make sure that all the tech stuff works and then we're good to go to start, but...
Yeah, fair enough. I'm wondering if we can get Gray's speaker on her computer. Maybe we could. Who knows?
Okay, sweet, nice.
Ooh, you know what I'm gonna do? Sorry. Alright, perfect. That way I won't walk in front of it.
I think so. We can even... here for now?
Are you gonna need this space though?
Nah, thank you. Fair enough. Tyler, does it seem like a good setup?
Best we're gonna get for sure.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I think so. Because Jean's sitting right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I don't want to like block her view or
All the debaters have
nothing like
chairs,
that.
all the judges have chairs. Seems like a done.
Jesus, Mary, just found it. Oh my God, we got Diego in the corner. Everything's
We got
fine.
Diego in
Hey Greg,
Yeah.
would you just do like a mic, like a sound check?
Yes.
Because can you connect to the output of your computer, please, to your speaker so that it's a little bit louder?
So true.
More
Great
audible.
idea.
And then, why is it not the case that we can see your computer?
I got it, don't worry.
Okay, perfect.
I'm gonna turn the audio off there. Wait, 8 seconds. Yeah, I just need 8 seconds. There we go. Let me just put it.
Is that your computer speaker? There you go. Perfect. Okay. For the 1AC, we are going to dim the lights and ask for as much silence as can be provided. Is that okay with everybody, or would anybody prefer that we not dim the lights?
Is it particularly bright, the video?
No.
Okay.
No. If anybody needs us to at any point, lower music, raise music, anything in between,
Thumbs
dim
up
the
or thumbs
screen,
down.
etc., just let us know.
Oh.
Okay.
Let me just give me.
That's coming out of your speaker, right?
Yeah. The one last thing I probably need to do to debate is
Flow paper. Flow paper is in that white bag right there between Lauren and Michaela.
Kansas y'all got wins.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, and everybody has received the one I see. Is that true?
It's the same one that was sent.
Yeah. Oh no! Oh, this might suck. Yes. It appears that it's either on or off. Do we feel that off is okay? It is less important that you necessarily flow the one I see than that you listen to the one I see. Okay. We'll obviously turn it on after. Hey, there's a balloon here. That's awesome. Okay. And the recording's going and everything? Cool. Now it's not ours. Good? If you are good, I am good.
Beautiful.
This to me is being in Hollywood and being in films and giving happiness to other people, but being a really great actress and a great comedian.
Do you ever feel like something is wrong, but you don't know exactly what? Like everything sucks, like it's falling apart and you have to do something about it now, go somewhere else, anywhere, because things should be different, but they're not. Like dysphoria, but the problem is not with your body or with your mind. The problem is with the world itself. Dysphoria mundi. I am a split between the body that they impose on me and the soul that they fabricate. A rupture in human natural history, an epistemic hole, a political breach, a business for psychologists, a cognitive dissonance, an attack on common sense, a media mind, a case study about which government, scientific organizations, psychiatrists, lawyers, the pharma industry, fascists, socialists, Marxists, and humanists always have something to say. Transis, understood as a tear in the fabric of truth as common sense, becomes an appeal to a non-existent God, the semiotic transcription of power marked by presumptive disbelief against a conservative claim that transition is an affront to common sense for liberals. The trans community must seemingly respond. We are not seductive, we are not new, and we never change our minds. If the problem is not the world, but the split between our minds and bodies, then these responses are a reassurance that the fabric of common sense can be repaired, the body and soul stitched back together, human national history smooth, the epistemic hole filled, the political breach repaired, and business as usual restored. But the desire to speak truth to power can never be liberation, because truth is not a reflection of reality, but a construction of power. The problem is not that belief in certain statements are false, but the world to which these beliefs give coherence. That world is dysphoria mundi, the crumbling of an old order of power and politics that works to make itself common sense. Preciado 22, dysphoria does not exist as a mental illness. Dysphoria must be understood as a breach between two epistemological regimes. Dysphoria named the common sabbatical political condition, revolutionary repression, dark forces across continents. Dysphoria mundi, this dysphoric and revolutionary present sets the stakes of debate. Dysphoria mundi predetermines what coheres as argumented reasoning, imbuing common sense with a disbelief in trans-argumentation that what is assigned does not have to be accepted. Every position within this epistemic war is a losing one, because the problem is not the content but the form. It's not a question of what speech acts are, but what they do. It's not a question of deeming whether some believe in false statements, but rather of understanding why some statements function as buttresses that support a structure of collective perception that is collapsing. Preciado 22. Truth is not an empirical system nor a total theory underlying fact, but a series of apparatuses of verification of ritualized social mechanisms allow society to establish difference, prevent the process of struggle of minor historically oppressed knowledge for acquiring new sets of truth. Words that are unpronounceable or emerge on the surface. These same words by becoming public transform constructive subject to enunciate them. Dysphoria mundi as the infrastructure of deliberation explains why conservatives cannot be appealed to convinced by appeal to the truth of transis. The world tends to become obvious, imprisoned in the prejudices derived from common sense. This is to assume a close fit between individuals and their everyday. This assumption is baseless to those of us for whom this everyday seemed hostile. As a trans person, common sense does not suit us as violent, disorienting, shot through with questions. Cisgender common sense sets a limit on what views are immune from the otherwise inescapable realm of justification. Dysphoria mundi's trouble will reign so long as voices legitimize cisgender common sense. Do you know how to flow this one AC? Do you have shorthand for it? How do you know that what you've written captures what you've seen? When you flow the 1NC, will it feel more complete, coherent, truthful? On a topic about labor, trans knowledges are an epistemic breach, a contradiction in politics and the truth claims that construct it. Collective bargaining is a conflict of perceptions and ideologies within the one-dimensional regime of truth permeated by possessive individualism. Rights rhetoric assumes a zero-sum game, but we need a different starting point. Rights are a way in which we relate and care. It is not an either-or proposition to propose an interpretation of rights. Workers' rights need to be conceived in relation to sensations and intensities that drive them, experience in ordinary encounters. This affective dimension of work requires that we place it at the core of debates, because collective bargaining
cannot be limited to the legal framework. Organizers must explore a more expansive definition of collective bargaining, ultimately changing the very nature of power and the regimes of truth that flow from it. The right to bargain collectively is real implementation in the social setting of the ideal. Within this setting, Transis has something to say about labor. The body is malleable, stands in opposition to concepts of the body as teleologically adapted for labor. Here we see the dire material and historical consequences of a magical claim that what we think about the body shapes the real world political potentials of that body and the world in which it lives. There are no longer grand narratives, but fragments, severed speech acts, recorded rights, theatricalized forms of authority. This does not imply a denial of ontology. It is a matter of accepting that ontology is inseparable from power. An epistemic war is a battle between different forms of life. Dysphoria Mundi names the infrastructure of society and politics that is collapsing. Trying to cling onto it to find stability can only result in the internalization of disbelief and the instantiation of common sense. If truth is not salvation, if the problem is not with the world, is with the world and not with us, if disbelief prevails without a common sense that demands it, and if we can never get the right when the problem itself is wrong, we need a different grounding for politics, thought, and desire. Vote affirmative to endorse trans magical thinking. Harlock 22. Being a transsexual is a form of magical thinking, attempts to create a definition, a theory of sufficient stability to argue, take our very ontology as something debatable, as if it is an illusion that might simply be disbelieved. These attempts are doomed to failure. Transis is not a singular or coherent object of analysis. Transsexuality is a method of evaluation and reading. It's a philosophy of history. It's an ontology. It's an epistemology of self and gender. It's a means of relating to others. It's a modality of fucking. It's a means of establishing and negating kinship. It's a means of storytelling and self-narration. It's a genre. It's trauma. It's harrowing. A lot of us don't survive it for long. It's fun. I want to offer a certain kind of concession, terrifying in what it gives up, enticing in what it might open elsewhere. The concession is this: the claims of transsexuals cannot be proven by rationalizing discourse. This concession resigns us the assertion that transsexuality itself is shaped by magical claims, that the past can be changed, that changing it reshapes the present and the future in turn, that some essence exists beyond the body which might be accessed, known, and altered, that the body can be changed in ways that interact with this fundamental essence. Instead of appeals to rationality within a common sense that derives off of them, transmagical thinking speaks in a grammar heretical to Dysphoria Mundi that liberalism cannot bear to hear. Transis is robust, omnipresent, and can emerge at any time. This builds a new infrastructure of politics, a new common outside of hegemonic narratives of universal and universalizing truth, a utopian organization of political desire, an exercise in cognitive emancipation, a counter-narrative that seeks to modify the perspective on what is happening, to change the questions in order to propose new answers. To imagine is already to act. The one you see itself is a form of transmagical thinking. Boss and Marvin 26 films offer divergent narratives of trans tactics producing spaces that disrupts the strategies. Films explore how trans life can be made possible even at the cost of the sex strategies that seek trans death. Trans film makes this thing with possible to consider cinema itself as space or fraught rooms. Trans people can come together in order to collectively experience trans thought. The liberatory possibilities of a trans film as a mechanism of trans collective sociality and labor are materially present in these works. The clips of Grey in her childhood overlaid with visions of another future that can't be rationally explained, the everyday magic of HRT and Candy Darling's performative speech that brings happiness into being by being on film are trans-magical thinking. Trans has something to teach us about truth. For me to become a man, I had to say something heretical to hegemonic regimes of truth-making that I already was. Trans-magical thinking names a relationship between the act of speaking and the power of making that works to create a world where worker serves to call otherwise into community, collected in line with trans aesthetics, the discursive work of care, affective labor, service work, reproductive labor, and trans liberation can be theorized as a vital set of subjugated knowledge pertinent to community survival. Trans-magical thinking is a collectivization of overlaid truths that leads a splintered community to question and renegotiate its shared identity. Film is stylistically experimental, blending documentary with magical techniques to create a dreamlike meditation. How do you feel as you watch the film and listen to the one I see? Disoriented? Confused? Interested? Stay with those feelings. Suspend your disbelief. What is happening cannot be described with the economic language of neoliberalism. The possibility of revolution depends on a collective capacity to invent a new grammar, new language to understand the social mutation, the transformation of the senses and consciousness that is underway. We need to produce other percepts, other affects, and another desire to perceive, feel, and name differently, to know differently. Belief is something trans women can do like no one else. With everything, everyone doubting, they are given a belief that can create worlds, make what is impossible real. Belief is gift, power, and magic, and I believe.
I've already made myself happy. I mean, because I am in films. And, well, there's nothing quite like it.
Good?
Mhm.
Okay. How do we determine what is true or not?
Well, our argument is that truth is not the metric of politics. We can't. Truth is a.
So, is it impossible to determine if something is true or not?
Well, truth only exists in relation to power. Truth is power that masquerades as knowledge to perfect the lie of dysphoria
So,
that the future
how do
must
we
be a continuation
Important
of the past.
clarification. In reference to truth, it's lowercase t truth in a Foucauldian sense. It's truth as determined with power. Not like the AFF is not going to defend the
So-
sun isn't real. Like
Okay, so what are you defending then?
truth, what is considered coherent politically, what is considered coherent to be said in the first place, is overdetermined by power.
The one you see in response is an aesthetic
Okay.
argument about
Which
transmagical
argument?
You
thinking.
said we need a more expansive definition of CBR. What is that definition?
Well, the one I see was an aesthetic argument about transmagical thinking as a form of epistemic labor that we have named heresy. The images in the movie forge a different.
What do you think?
Comments.
What do you think CBR means?
Well, I think that it could mean a lot of different things, but to
Okay.
us, we think that it means the 1AC. It forges a different
okay.
common sense, the
Are
hegemonic truth.
are
that is
dropped
gross
arguments
and
true?
I don't really know what you mean by dropped arguments. Okay.
If you go for a critique though of the like lowercase t true distinction, that's going to be intentionally sad because why would dropped arguments be capital T true?
Top and bottom of the one you see. Happiness
Power
is,
plays
to me is being in Hollywood. Why is your personal happiness something that we should negate?
Well, that's not our happiness. That's Candy Darling's happiness. It's a form of magical thinking that calls her happiness into being, that brings about the world that she has imagined.
You also can't
Also-
negate her happiness
also-
because she's
also-
already made herself.
True, but also we've
And
invited you to
happiness.
negate our theory, method, and performance. The one you see is an invitation to think heretically against hegemonic regimes of truth.
Okay, why
You
is
should-
it
you
why is it
should-
desirable
you
for us to
should-
negate your theory, method, performance?
You should negate because we've asked you to. You could accept our invitation and imagine futures outside
Why
the
did you ask
story
us
movie,
to?
but I suspect that you'll decline that invitation and impose your construction of truth.
Why did
as
you
a mode
Why did you
of-
ask us to
as a mode of
negate
power.
your method, your performance? Why did you think that's good?
I mean, of course we want you to. Transmagical thought is a collective project. It
Collective project.
exceeds
Okay.
what any one
What-
of us could
sorry.
think alone, which is why we must do it together. Now, whether you
What
choose to engage in
is-
that is up to you, but I
What
hope
is
you choose.
transmagical thinking?
Transmagical thinking is a heretical suspension of disbelief that reformulates how politics and deliberation is organized. If transsexuality cannot be verified within the regime of power that masquerades as truth, we can either take the side of truth and sanction disbelief and elimination of transness, or conclude truth is an undesirable goal of politics and move to what exceeds it, magic.
Truth is undesirable. Okay. Panel, pull up the one you see, control F black. We all watched the movie that centers white trans people. I'll give you the rest of the cross text to explain why you do not include any black people in your transmagical world.
Yeah, two reasons. First, the 1AC was a performance of like transmagical thought as I imagine through femininity.
So
I
your
should
imagination
not,
includes no black people.
I should not be doing blackface.
She should not
in a
imagine
movie.
her
Are you kidding me?
herself as a
Oh,
black
you
woman.
had-
She
oh,
should
yeah,
imagine
no.
herself as a white woman.
Trey
had
should be black in the movie.
Other
top
people
the one
in the
and
movie
see
that weren't
what?
you.
Okay, the one I see was sent. It's 3 off, and then the case.
Oops. Oh, we could turn this off.
3.
Cool. Give me a second.
Can you scoot down, Dre, and so that I can give Jeannie a little more?
Yeah.
Oh,
Not
like,
much.
by that I mean, can you? Oh, wait. I could maybe move myself over here. Hang on. Sorry. Oh my gosh, this room situation is so bad. Okay. Great, you can unplug it. I actually, there's that projector. It was here.
Cool.
Sorry.
Timer 2. Would you hand me my backpack?
Yes.
Alright. I'm good whenever Spence is.
Okay, panel. Awesome. First off, topicality interpretation. The opportunity to demonstrate desirability of resolution or action. The exclusively demonstrated compatible alternatives more desirable. They have not satisfied the condition on the USFG refers to 3 branches. What else? Noting the federal government's commitment to 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. 2. Collective bargaining rights are the legal obligation for an employer and a union to negotiate and on. 13. Collective bargaining agreements is statutorily created obligation of an employer and a bargaining unit to negotiate a labor agreement. 2. Impacts. 1. Clash. Iteration of the resolution drives argument, refinement, innovation, and persuasion skills throughout the season. We all debate for different reasons, but clash is the only unique feature of debate. It is a prerequisite to any offense about engagement and knowledge production. Clash avoidance drives echo chambers, and monopolization of the moral high ground turns education arguments and forces shallow debates with no rule for the negative. Education about labor rights is critical and uninformed public, enables workplace exploitation and unsafe working conditions may fair. 25 NLB policies raise alarm bells over the workers' rights issues with goals of improve public awareness, focus on improving workers' informing workers' rights, increasing focus on resource non-English speakers and improving accessibility, expanding know your rights programs and efforts to include historically marginalized populations for immigrants and youth engaged in outreach and educational workers will suffer public education. Know your rights programs are banned. Workers can be easily abused, making workers more vulnerable, keeping them uninformed, allowing employees to undercut labor conditions, deprive overtime by unsafe working conditions, expand our education. It is important when it comes to NLRA because the breadth of protections are beautifully afforded that workers now and they have the right to unionize and how to do so. The second impact is fairness. The resolution is the only stable ground for reparation. Skirting it eliminates rejoinder and renders NEG ground concessionary, which skews debate towards the AFF. Fairness logically precedes all other content in this debate because every argument requires unbiased evaluation to be rendered coherent, and is the only impact of valid community. Topicality is not punishment. It is not making a claim about the wrongness of bringing in an untopical AFF. It only rectifies an unfair advantage. It is also fair regardless of structural factors. Maki 82. If a player committed a following penalty area, the other side is awarded the penalty kick, which gives it a good chance of scoring. Fairness has been restored. Whether the goal results or not, it may make penalties proportional to your wrongness, but they'll not advantages again. This is very far from positive retribution received or punishment. I counterbalance wrongness. Next off is the nostalgia prick. We affirm trans magical thinking absent. I always appeal to nostalgia. Nostalgia is a double turn with and invest in the logic of magical thinking. If we kick it, then this pick is a deficit case. Brennett 23. Nostalgia is oversimplification of the past and not requires subtle analysis or requires a simplification by smoothing over bumps and dragging edges filtered on it. Challenges that are really good times conveniently forgot struggles, heartaches, and complexity, and the idealization of the past, blurring the lines between reality and romanticized versions when we for a time that never truly existed. Next off is the folk politics. This had the folk politics. The AFF is the epitome of folk politics. It dooms the AFF solvency to individual changes at the expense of coalition action that locks in capitalism. Hester 15. There are issues with the framing of political agency, pressure out of talking service, small scale intervention, micropolitics, and manifests itself exclusively at the level of the atomized subject with a little imaginativity, appropriation, and interconnect, expand scale of especially experimentation, and it carries the risk of individual limited and depolitization, pressure out of work trenches on folk policy to risk it was remain satisfied with the isolated temporary adjustment of experimentation rather than socially transformative projects. Contend with the capitalism is dependent on shifting structures and non-localized. There's obvious issue scale for individual bodies and re-engineering humanity with little born. A little in between the pragmatic is actionable and is entirely absent the perceived dangers of thinking about the individuals who can train on the sex rights under possibility gender self-experimentation cooperative collective or hegemonic purpose. The impact is global existential crisis driven by the worst excess of neoliberal exploitation. Williams 15 locals and extension far beyond the level of abstraction of the root cause of political, ecological, and economic problems of the solution was adopting a small purchase sense of empowerment can be misleading. The problem is with localism that is intimidating to reduce large scale system problems that do not systematic interconnectedness with the state's natural global exploitation of planetary climate change with everything served population the repeated crisis of capitalism abstract complex and non-localized there systematic and abstract require a systematic abstract response. The alternative is to reject the absolute localism in favor of the leftist governmentality smoking. Zucker 15 moral revoltism is not a substitute for normal equivalent of political action in the political strategy. The key is to understand politics about organizing the legitimate power of the state to enforce laws to prevent social justice and expand the horizon of social justice. It requires understanding the mechanism of election like a constitutional interpretation. The contemporary left has abandoned these concerns as of certain anti-political authoritarianism has become a virtue into of itself. Now, the case page 1 is the eraser term. The 1AC enacts a performative erasure of black argumentation. Every instance of black argumentation or black studies in the 1AC is shrunk down to 5-point font and not highlighted. We have inserted both instances in yellow. This turns every invocation of cross-racial solidarity as a component for AF solvency, and it means you can vote negative on presumption. Think back to cross-ex whenever they refer to what the AF does for black trans folk. If this was the case, what explicitly removes references from those groups? Externally, this is offense. It turns the AF's project into a racist tool to maintain white trans exceptionality in the face of black votes and trans folks that do most of the heavy lifting. Cross-ex did not get them out of it. They said that the portions of it that were gray, they also only included other white trans women and excluded that from their scholarship. Second is the self-focused turn. The 1AC's individualistic point of view in the video is a double turn with itself. If it is true that there is neoliberal structures of thought per their evidence, then that inherently govern trans consensus in society. Then the 1AC only discussing the lived experiences of the Iowa AP restructures that very structure by prioritizing it and defining the structure by an individualistic point of view. At worst, this means you should vote negative on presumption because the AFF can never possibly solve the impacts of the 1AC. At best, this is an offensive reason to vote neg because it means the 1AC is counterproductive towards resolving their offense. Third is the resilience discourse turn. Resilience discourse, specifically in the context of Candy Darling, ignores emotional honesty and reserves for pain necessary for emotional movements. 10, 24, Darling concluded to inspire a woman who's inscrutable whenever she lived in Darling competitive and emotional honesty, a touch of melancholia, a suggested complex in her life and in her most accurate self to emulate how it's the reserve for pain and masculine composure at the same shoots you live on the camera. The stop turning. Fourth is the Preciado turn. Preciado introduces violent metaphors and fails to include recent transit queer scholarship. Proctor 25. What does it mean for Preciado to declare my body said the city of Wuhan does declare solidarity is not informants, but his discussion Preciado treats experiences middle class with a secure work like condition of exemplary careers locked down in amount migrants are denied by the state by white norms lived in detention centers and individuals compartment. He's like likeliness of the national border systems. It becomes prisons and frankly obscene people spent pandemics in actual detention where their condition had little in common with those insecure in immigration status. I found in articles musings about how their body and violently police nation state underpinnings of the text. Text stated try to shrink and hell a recent queer entry scholarship influence. Preciado 4. There is no unifying conservative and liberal coalition. Liberal claims about transit. 22. There's a technical blower question. I don't understand this. So as media policymakers they say something becomes something violently important for trans people to get whatever markers we want. Actually, don't strike that card. People change their minds. Pollock 21. Garner feel experience on trans prejudice. Vast number of voters were visited by volunteers. Canvassers use a plain sequence of questions aimed at coaxing people instead of taking the respective transgender individuals' conversation. Reduce prejudice. Conversations worked regardless of whether the canvassers were transgender or not. Laundry list of reasons why affect theory fails. Sherwin. In 19, affect alluded that a loose capture theory romanticized unknowable historical trouble neuroscience theories play down obstacles to evolution of biological programming and programming uncertainty surrounding communication around the mind-body theory system. Affect can be cognized. It's like third counter. We don't know what it's there. We can't say anything. The problem is that affected are incapable of signifying manipulative behavior. How agents and unknowable sufficiently to control their impact. Metaphors being a very sufficient sensitive explanation of the nomenclature for engineering of affect. Also from the fundamental lack of explanatory power, we cannot. And if we cannot know what affect is, we cannot know how to control it. Their flow and impact. 5 reject deference politics. How and 20 the call to listen to most effective has been handling conversational authority. Those who fit in the social categories associated with those regardless of how they actually are different kind of marginal interests and access to a social advantage most effective and incarcerated underemployed without internet. They're the people in the wrong precisely because they are unrepresented. They're very people they are asked to represent different serves. Elite capture. Mark the card. At elite capture 6 is turn. Unions are good and rights are legally necessary for trans people. Singer. And 20. A pragmatic approach to transical advocacy can recognize rights has been a fundamental and advancing trans rights to look outside their rights. It does not dismiss the role of rights to litigation and not just trans legal issues. Family law reform has responded to complaints about the recognition of family relations and privacy laws. Legal legal name of trans person protected informers rights has been useful in order to improve trans rights, but also recognizing limitation to use of rights. And instruments can be critical in ensuring the grounds that are invoked when discrimination and single access to trans advocacy. The use of writing the legal strategy. 6 is the possible turn. Searching for truth is good. The plaintiff's affirmation of linguistic indeterminacy fuels the conservative playbook. They give neocon justification for understated executive war making, like John U. Passport and Tim. It has become conventional to celebrate pluralism and multiple interpretation possibility regarded text. What is about playfully communicative possibilities lead to less for the most conservative regardless that a racist text that are opening multiple interpretation lead as suggests the meaning of moments to open multiple interpretations that should feel ready for some minute establish the class section of a monument and public by the multiple interpretation that lead to outcomes from later digital multiply multiple communicative possibilities can isolate sovereign power particularly tortures interrogations use the author of key and a memorandum asserting the president's discretionary power to make war engage in war unless surveillance and just tortures and interrogations view just source pure mediality. Passivant is marked at mediality. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. You have made a claim that there was a stasis point around which debate has formed. You said this stasis point is good and we have departed from it. Is that true? Yeah.
Around which debate has formed?
Yeah. Like your framework interpretation.
We said, here's what we think the resolution means.
Yeah.
We said, here's why you don't mean what we think it means. We're inviting you to counter-define what it means so we can negotiate over what the topic means.
Okay, so there is an epistemic community that is shared with you that understands, the resolution to be named this way. You've said that we've departed from this, and we're over here. The 1AC read a bunch of counter definitions that you did not recognize as such, and still you were like,
we do.
You violated stasis.
You did read definitions, that's why we counter-defined, so we can have a negotiation over which ones are better.
Okay,
we admit
so
that you
why is stasis then not all the way like over where you said it was? And why is it not in the middle?
I'm not sure what in the middle means. In this
We're going to
instance.
debate about which definitions are better, and the judges should. That's going to be based off debatability, the ability for the NEG to engage with the AF, and then the judges will determine which one's best for debate. But we're not saying this is always what CPR means, like universally. We're saying in debate we have to decide what these words mean so we can negate each other. We think this is best for clash, fairness.
Okay. When the judges decide what those words mean, what happens? Like what happens to chaos? Do they stop being read?
No.
Judges endorse a model that we think is preferable.
Judges don't. Okay.
just, like,
Judges
enter a ballot.
endorse a model. But chaos don't stop being read. You've made a bunch of arguments about clash.
We've not made an argument that chaos being read or this chaos being read is not a good thing. We've said that we should have a negotiation about which model of debate is preferable. Like, we don't think negating this AF itself is bad. Rather, we just think that the AF should center a stasis point.
Oh, why was negating this AF good?
Why was negating this AF? Well, I guess a lot of the case arguments we've made actually indicate debating this AF is very bad, and that this AF is bad for a lot of reasons. But
so it is bad.
I mean, yeah, like I don't know.
So
T
why
does
could
negate,
it be good to negate this AF?
T does negate your AF.
T negates the AF. Then what's the impact? Where is your clash internal then?
Well, our clash thing is why T is good. So if you like exclude T, then we don't get to reasons why we get to say T.
Okay. The cat K, what's the internal link between the reading of it in here and the actualization of it out there?
It's an alternative political model that we've endorsed. We think we should reject small-scale interventions into like how we relate to each other, how we relate to words, etc., and instead
how
talk about
does the
their
alt
inclusivity.
recruit people if not at a small scale?
How does the alt what?
Recruit people if not at the small scale of people in the room? Don't
The
you start meetings?
alt is like belief in the state and working through the state to do good things.
alt
So
is
it does not
belief
require
in the
like individualistic relations with people.
Wait. That seems to require individuals to hold a belief in the state and then act on it.
Like as a political method.
What are you talking
Contrary
about?
to the 1AC's political method.
Okay, the
like
pic,
the 1AC has said
the
that.
pic, what,
yeah.
where have we appealed to nostalgia?
Like the entire video was all about Gray as like had a bunch of images of Gray as a child, etc., and all of this.
Prep. Start. Stop 9:35. Second.
Do you want to speak from here, Gray? It might be easier.
Sure.
Okay.
The order is going to be 1 second. My deduction. Case, pick, cap, framework.
Sorry, can you do that one more time?
Yeah. Case, pick, cap.
How much prep did you say you had?
Wait, 9:35. Would you write that down somewhere?
Yes. Oh shit. Do we have more clothes over here?
Yeah, it's in that bag.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You said 9:35?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't have pens. I totally lied about being ready. Okay, I'm good.
Anyone not ready? The thesis of our AFF is that truth is corrosive to trans. At the heart of the film is a terrifying concession. Transsexuality cannot be verified scientifically nor justified politically because truth is a hegemonic regime of epistemic labor that produces knowledge about trans people but never with us. That leaves us with a choice. Either take the side of truth and its common sense that says transis is the moral pathology of a select few or commit heresy against truth. They've conceded a theory of power that flows from this premise. The impact is dysphoria mundi, the generalized feeling of stuckness when the present is unbearable but change is out of reach. That's the oppressive feeling in the first half of the film as the music drowns out Spencer's words. It manifests in two ways. First, elimination. Common sense coercively enforces a singular truth, precluding change while carrying out slow eradication through rising fascism and anti-trans elimination. That builds the common to a prior war on trans life, like the rhetoric of stasis on framework or Trump's ad campaigns. Two, disbelief. We internalize hegemonic truths that tell us transition and change are impossible. It's why Sarah McBride will agree she shouldn't be allowed in women's restrooms in Congress, or why trans girls will self-segregate out of sports. Vote AFF to think heretically with us. Heresy is that most transsexual of magic that says the past can be changed. What was assigned at our birth need not be accepted, like the videos of my childhood self in the 1AC showing me that in changing the past we unlock the future. The film was this magical thought that produces a different sense of the commons by lingering in the small moments of unrecognized epistemic labor. The moment when Candy says, I am happy, bringing it into being, Francis Apari dancing with flame, or Spencer doing his T-shot suspends our disbelief that we've internalized as natural and inevitable, which makes revolutionary acts possible. Now, the role of the judge is to suspend your disbelief. Neutral decision making is possible because your sense of truth and perception of the flow are coordinated and advanced by a hegemonic epistemic system. This is Judge Church. You won't vote on tech or truth because neither can be separated from power. Proven by the fact you already have shorthand for the framework arguments but never ours. You'll never catch every word in the way you did catch a feeling. Stay with that feeling. Any presumption warrants are answered by reading a framework gives us uniqueness, and because presumption flips app, hegemonic truths require constant performance to sustain them, so it's less energy to reinvest them. Now, 1AC1 was the erasure arguments. A. Cross-X clarifies this. So 1AC was a performance of my experiences with modes of transmedical thought. That means it'd be actively worse for me to engage in a form of digital blackface by imagining myself into black femininity. Infinitely worse. B. This links worse to frameworks. As a re-highlighted bow is, first, we re-highlighted parts about 1AC was about us as white people which can engage and be compatible with black trans aesthetics, but the 1AC is obviously not black aesthetics, which was the first re-highlighting. Two, insofar as engagement with black aesthetics is good, per their highlight that the D8 is there enter that says it should not be the locus of debate. If the re-highlight is both, then we should think about, again, modes of best engagement with black thought, which is a D8 is an interpom framework, which overly restricts the category of what engagement can look like past the modes of critical horizons that exist now, and engage in these modes of thought. Next is the self-focus argument. A, there's a pathology G. A, trans is always cascaded in its collective project as being too individualistic, too much of an identity project. This is how transmedical thought is always rendered illegitimate or a faulty project. This reproduces the suspension of disbelief in this, or reproduces the internalization of disbelief in this debate. You should reject that. B, no, the AFF is collective. That's all our work, and when I see cross-sticks about why we should all think collectively together, why transmedical thought is always already a collective project, because it takes from the individual and thinks, how can the world change from there? The Candy Darwin turn. A, there's no impact to this evidence, so I don't know what they'll try and go for, but B, insofar as they are right that she had a complex life, they're also right that she was able to manifest happiness for herself in this moment. It's not a disagreement with someone I see, it's a recognition that trans lives are complex. We agree. Preciado, A, the affirmative self-aware critique of the way Preciado over-individualizes his own analysis to think about himself in the context of Wuhan or Gaza, which Proctor says, of course, is bad. Our argument is yes, we should not think of ourselves as the ultimate recipient of this mode of violence, rather open ourselves to the possibility that there are modes of violence, but also modes of possibilities that we can never imagine.
That's why we say the problem is not with ourselves, but with them.
That's why we say the problem is not with ourselves, but the world. And B, not any part of the AFF we read, so no link. The Pollock evidence, yes, people can change their minds if they think magically. That's an absolutely warrant. The Sherwin evidence doesn't assume magic knowledge outside what comes to be known as truth, which means even if they're right about affect fails for the individual, we have a collective theory of affect that we can't grapple with. Deference politics, A, it's a collective politics, not a question of deference, but thinking with us, which in internal link terms it means there's only a risk or castigation. The alternative end up as these different politics. Union's good is a non sequitur with the AFF. They have one unique reason the AFF collapses. It means no TVA. We haven't critiqued all planet foods critiques their attempt to produce a single rhetorical model. The Poisson evidence AFF isn't indeterminacy. They have no link. And they have no disputation of this in the context of transis rejecting common sense, which means there's no offense. Pick. First, picks are bad, your balance should prioritize comparison between the AFF and NEG. B, 2, theoretical impact is a critical clash. They move on to the AFF forces debate ourselves, which destroys revolutionary testing. That's double twins, both CK, and the clash standard on frameworks. 3, no nostalgia in the 1AC. Who said my engagement with the sort of images of childhood in the 1AC were writ large positive or nostalgic? No, our argument is that we can change the past, and in changing the past, we're able to change the future, which is the opposite of nostalgia, because our rejection is the notion that the past is static and we should look back to it. Cap.
Framework capital double turn. Framework is counter-revolutionary appeal to power, means there is a counterinsurgent in their own party. 2. Proximity filters. Your bot is not proximate to organizing throughout the state, but believing it can makes the party less likely to form because the least space like debate that naturalizes power and touch. 3. Perm to the AFF and the tactics of the alt. Perm their key, check negative abuse. 4. The scapegoating DA. Extinction framing lets them outscale and outcalculate the party, which is victim blaming. That guarantees trans people are blamed for the organizational failures of Kansas's mode of state engagement. If persuasion is key to recruitment, they should persuade us to join. 5. Perm organize outside AF and here. Organizing in here is relevant and bad. Time constraints proof. 6. There's a bad Chinese DA. They frame us as the cause of the ultimate antithesis to the state, which is how Gavin Newsom says we need to stop focusing on trannies because they're politically risky. This is how disbelief becomes internalized within their alternative. The only link with Preciado, there is no link insofar as says the critique of Preciado's book Testo Junkie, which he is then critiquing in Dysphoria Mundi, which we've cut because he was too individualistic in it. Now, framework. Theory of power controls the flow. Dysphoria Mundi is the performative gap between their imagined procedures and the enactment of their mode. Framework is regime purification. The response is feeling of impasse with elimination, countering our invitation chains with disbelief that it could ever be possible. I'm at 21. Procedures that other non-performative layout principles that are supposed to govern the institutions. Non-performative speech has not bring into effect what they name. Saying something is not doing something, and performance not do what they say they do. Is the gap between bring something into effect and have strange effects. The gap between what is supposed to happen in accordance with the procedure and what does is densely populated. Mind the gap. We don't have to win a counter battle, only that they've enacted violence in the non-performance of theirs. Second is the common sense DA. It's a counter description of debate. Debate is decided to change. It evolved from hypo-testing to policy testing, the invention of plan text, negative fiat, and the counterplan case on the neg and the formalization of offense defense. Each was unpredictable and non-resolutional, but their heresy against established common sense produced transformative results that made debate what it is now, which is term of defense is their claim that fairness and predictability are axiomatic. Refusing to acknowledge the inevitability of chaos forces the trans debaters to either internalize Dysphoria Mundi and return to business as usual in the face of fascist attacks on our life, or burn out doing endless epistemic labor to resist that pathology. Voting absent not an endorsement of countermodel, but a momentary suspension of disbelief, a coexistence, however magical and impossible, that revives our agreements about what is fair and predictable by refusing a homogeneity frame. Trans speech is always figured in the excess limits of the topic, which means only this heretical act unlocks disqualified knowledges and debates transformative potential to destroy our sense of what is coming in subjectivity. Stanza 24. Differences are welcome, provided not challenge prior presupposition about the right participation. What happens when we bring disqualified knowledge to barrier without having to check large parts about what we care about at the door? Our primary aim should not be the imposition of homogeneity frame, but for versatile warning as a testing grounds to transformative warning. We revise our reality by altering agreements about what is real and fair, changing perceptions we bring into being. Fourth is a hegemonic truth. A. Understanding models of mutually exclusive blocks in a race to eliminate the critical commons of debates. Only see contained definitions that prove the collectivization of our epistemic labor is topical, but y'all's inability to see it proves interpretations always second to subjectivization. The counter-interpretation is the counter-definitions are never the benevolent mode of engagement they think, but they attempt to reimpose hegemony. The socialized rituals that within determines how you understand the signs and signifiers of the YC just as much as your subjectivity determines how you saw the images on screen. Our definitions are the shared heresy of critical debate that framework seeks to crush, like how NYUMS understands CBR as giving effect to abstract rights, or Wake and Long Beach ET understand collective bargaining as exercising power to confront capitalism and white supremacy, or Trinity KP who says truth and perception are central to collective bargaining, or Wyoming WM who sees rights as tied to effective labor. Teams like USC MT who understand it as zero sum, and Kansas BP who understand rights as transforming the social. Other teams like UNTPS that says works requiring grappling with trans aesthetics. That outweighs stasis of interpretation presumes a shared system of common sense which wages war on trans life. 24. Stasis understood as central legitimized to more inventing the general prior to exist in place of debate. Stasis secures the parameters of debate, produces a kind of prior war position necessary to construct the republic, produced as the law and enforced. Repetition transcends cannot be a more continually put to liberation, animated by an unasked question. Last, our defense. First, clash. 1. Don't maximize. Maximum clash is transphobia good, obviously not worth debating. 2. Content neutrality is self-defeating. If T is content neutral, then T is clash. She approves of bad. 3. No turns case. Self-T is predicate and convincing people. 4. Truth testing is backwards. Wayne case. Solid because it tests our arguments. If they say don't wait case, auto vote app because you couldn't test the truth of framework. 5. Link turn. Drive to win at all costs versus class. Think of sandbagging and non-disclosure. Try or die app, which answers skills. 6. Other forms solve, like card debate, should tell like counterpunch that solves their offense. Fairness. 1. Not universal. If you really want to win, we run a comp. It's way more strategic. Proof fairness doesn't overcome anything. 2. Education, not fairness paradox. It's the only valid debate. The reason judges give feedback to teams that beats the students. 3. If fairness is technical adjudication, AI solves better. Think about that AI screenshot we all got from the AI that I'll send out afterwards. I was like, what if debates were actually fair? AI could flow. 4. Cooperative incentives. Overturn competitive ones, which is why we never read T against chaos, even though we wax
T is a performative stat that sequences every other argument. Their imposition of it is a prior question to pick and cap.
Okay, you're good.
Yeah, hold on. Screenshot those references.
Okay, ready? Okay. The 2AC on framework talked about, a ton of different teams' perceptions of what they feel CBR is. What do you feel CBR is?
We've made an argument that the 1AC should be thought of as this mode of collectivity towards what we've defined as another epistemic labor heresy. Our argument with all the definitions, though, was that none of these definitions are correct, just as much as all of them are, because it is through the process of elimination, through the process of hegemonization of the right definition, the truest definition, the most useful definition.
Okay, I have a question.
That we reproduce the violence of dysphoria movie.
Okay, so what if someone has like a transphobic or a racist relationship to
Yeah,
CBR?
so
Is that
those
true?
definitions are bad because they are eliminationist. Why is a transphobic definition bad? Because it delegitimizes the existence of trans, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why, like, think of it like not all speech can be free speech because hate speech, yada yada. Like, it's that argument.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to talk about the Okay, so we read a piece of Palak evidence on case saying that people have radically changed the way that they feel about trans people. It does a bunch of like interviews with different people, gives them different questions. Your response to this argument is these people feel this way because they are thinking magically. I'm confused why the AFF is necessary if we've read a piece of evidence saying that like the violence you described is not existent in the status quo.
We think
so
the
that's true.
AFF point.
Yeah.
People can change their minds insofar as they learn to think magically. That is not a homogenizing claim, though, because I think we can both agree transphobia is on a rise right now, unless you want to say
But furthermore, the affirmative is an argument at the level of the debate space, and you read evidence at the level of it's outside.
Okay, so like these people have obviously not read Preciado. They didn't see your YC video,
Correct.
and they are thinking magically. So
Because
what about the AF's performance
heresy
itself is good for them?
Because heresy doesn't only exist through the exact presentation of this YC. This is why it's a collective project. This is why it's a non-hegemonic project. This is an example of that.
Okay.
This is a invitation here to do it.
What does heresy mean to you?
Heresy?
Yeah.
Heresy to be heretical to the dominant modes of knowledge and truth that make up the now, right? That make up these hegemonic regimes of verification.
To say that there is not a linear trajectory between the past and the present that makes the future one determined thing, that we can change the past and in changing it
To
we
say
change
that
the
we can
future.
debate otherwise, there can be modes of debate that we can't understand yet, but we can feel.
Okay. I think
that's radical.
Okay, I think I have one last question. So like it's kind of about the 1AC. So whenever you were creating the video for the 1AC, whenever you were constructing pieces of evidence and people that you were citing, etc., how did you come to determine what you wanted to include in that?
Well, we saw
So for the film itself, I can go through the film and then to the movie, right?
Okay.
The film itself, I pulled, a lot of just like what I had, right? I had the idea of like, well, the past can be changed. My parents don't like the videotape, so I didn't have a lot to work with. But I also pulled from films that have inspired me and made me learn to think magically.
Okay.
Done. Great. We can continue to sit here, and I think that's good.
Okay.
Drag the chair.
Yeah, I will.
the card, it's just T.
I feel like it makes more sense to me.
Oh, fair enough. Let me.
Not as much truth.
I got it all good.
Give me a second. We're gonna talk about- do you have some toilet paper this time? Good.
Okay, begin. Okay. Debate is a voluntary game. All come here to win the NDT. Team spread your lemon line, post our bad traditions, and break the UFs. Elims to increase their chance of victory. Debate must protect over truth. If the theory of power is wrong, in debate, do not suspend your disbelief. First, low stakes. The ballot is only judgment on technical argument execution, not the truths of our position. The only intrinsic impact to your ballot is one team wins and another loses. This is offense for us. Infusing the ballot with the power to determine truth creates unhealthy attachment to debate. Creates causes exhaustion that as every speech is a defense of what it means to be a trans person and what is not. Second, competition overturns radicalism. Every argument ever introduced inserts the game itself. I.e., you could not change the fundamental nature of the game by playing it. And you could not change how related to truth claims by asserting truth claims. Believe the ballot is emancipatory, diminishes energy used to be change of structures. They can be volunteering, sending travel and hotel money to charity, and fighting on the ground. But both things have chosen to be at the NDT. Third, truth over tech inserts personal judge biases over the arguments of debaters. If they are right that we have the really transphobic things because of power structures, then we shouldn't let judges go rogue and vote on how arguments personally make you feel. Even if they win theory of power, we still win the debate. First, topicality does not link. We do not impose any universal meaning of CBR's. Kansas is the topicality school. Our Dropbox has like 15 definitions. What CBR's means, of course, we don't think it has only one meaning. Rather, we think in this debate, it's best for us to adopt this interpretation to maximize the negative ability to respond. Iowa can disagree with that, and we will have negotiations over which interpretation is better. We also don't think that our procedures are universal. Get implemented if you vote negative. We just think that it means that you voted negative for Kansas. Second, turn definitions should be established by evidence. That makes it more accessible than any alternative because everyone has access to the internet and can find those definitions. Guessing what the rest means because I won't base what Iowa tells you. Monopolizes prep in their hands and it creates biased community consensus. Only debating about the quality of definitions can guarantee a model debate that is best for both sides of offense. But they didn't define words or have a definition that says this is what the word means, or indict ours, which means their model is way more biased than ours. If they think truth over tech is truth, that means the tuner gets infinite new answers because there's no logic that says I don't get new R's other than an appeals procedure which they have rejected. Okay, no common sense to set. One, allowing theory debates means debates will always be fair and predictable and self-correcting, i.e. if the neg goes for an unfair counterpoint, then it can always be beaten by theory. That's why hypothetical doesn't happen anymore, which is why you should always allow some procedural argument in debate to maximize debate's ability to be engaging. At some point they have a K of coherence. I'll answer that here. Those are all self-defeating. They have to coherently tell you that coherence is bad, which itself requires coherence. Thus, you can be reason to vote against us. They don't meet their role of the judge because you have to believe their argument to suspend your disbelief. Second, not applicable to debate at all. The tutor will point out how he dropped an argument. Thus, is true. Your ballot is not a judgment on truth claim that was explained above. Third, rejecting truth is bad will be in the 1 hour. Four, truth is obviously not always overturned by power. The fact that Iowa thinks that their thing is true means that you don't always have to believe your thing and get everything you hear, and we have some autonomy to filter through what we think is true or not, or else how could Iowa have ever come to the conclusion that the AFF is true? Five, worst case, T only casts truth on definitions of words in the topic, not what it means to be a trans person. So nothing about voting on topicalities, referendum on the truth of transition. There's zero internal link to burnout because this Memorial Monday is totally unrelated to topicality and how trans people relate to their bodies. Their counter they don't meet it. Marriage is above because they have to believe in the specific of disbelief to actually do it. Now, our offense, suspending your disbelief in the words of the res reduces the quality of argument interactions. Debate is best when confined to controversial
controversial and predictable topics and using our definition. First is agent. They've severed the phrase USFG. Even if they're right by the definition of CPR, they have no counter definition of what USFG means. With that job, it means the federal, the government, and DC, which is the 3 branches. That means they open up defenses of 8 billion different people. I'm not ready for all 3 Michigan teams that make their own little movies that have to negate. They can defend the academia, the debate community, specific teams, or even individual people. Iowa can say it's good for gray interpersonally to project truth or be happy or something, and that turns KPK debates. Because even the broadest nerds like Cab will lose support. You do you, we do us. Second method, they've severed the requirement to strengthen CBRs, which they job or the government's responsibility to require negotiation between an employer and employee. That's the 1C evidence. That means we can open up defenses of methods like movies, journals, fugitivity, boosting, going on strike, meditating, etc. All ad teams can monopolize crap by making an objectively good idea, like empathy, mutual reflection, mutual aid, or we should not always believe what the power people tell us to do, which is what basically what this S is. What this F is. Concede that we don't get picks on the other page in that they always get perms, so we have to get the entire 1AC, which is and defend the squo, because we don't get counterpoints functioning because they always get perms, which is not possible and actually limits the next ability to engage in magical thinking, ground out ways, because they always require saying no. Our interp solves our offense using our definition. The community carefully crafted the res that equalize AFF and NEG ground under our model. The AFF always gets to criticize labor law and say we should reform it. The NEG always gets case and counterpoints that balls collective bargaining rights and or legal rights. Okay, the hedge. Truth is that we straight turned it. First, no link. We did not impose universal meaning. That was explained above. And second, or the definition. I think I already did that. That was answering the head's truth is that says that definitions are way better than us. But third, the fact that the 1AC claimed to define CBR means they tried to impose truth on us, which means they leaned far worse to this because they did it first. Okay, now the 2NC had a rant, or the 2NC had a rant about how all these schools are redefining words about CBR, like NYU and Wake. We agree that different schools have interpretations of CBRs or points that we should debate about them and discuss which was best. They didn't defend any of these schools' interpretations or say why they were good, so I don't have to answer why all these things are bad, but we do have a 2NC to all these, but I shouldn't have to read it. Okay, they say the Buckner card. First, not all stasis is the same. As kind of explained above, we have a stasis for rural speech times that Iowa agrees to because they're not violating any of those things, so Iowa obviously reads some norms are okay, so they have to win that topicality is the same thing as saying trans people can't play sports or whatever the Buckner card is critiquing. Second, the TVA it solves. The United States federal government should guarantee collective bargaining rights for all workers. It solves any movie-based offense because you can make a movie about unions, but their answer to the TVA will prove Iowa's failure to engage in magical thinking. It would be magical to think that the combo of the ASK method and potential for legal unions to challenge trans violence is the best possible solution, but if they are foreclosing any potential for unions to do anything, then they have foreclosed magical thinking. The impact, okay, now our offense, the impact is clash. Other debates cannot solve it. It's a sliding scale, more is better, and that way because of form uniqueness. You should artificially inflate its value. You can learn from books, school, or whatever, but detailed argument interaction only happens here. It's a process-based impact. It's intrinsically good no matter your identity. We become more persuasive and capable of defending positions, and against our opponents become better info processors, able to filter through this info, be self-reflexive, and open-minded, which is key to turn the case. Okay, it turns the case. Case in point. T solves the search for truth. The 1EC that says there's always multiple overlayer truths that need to be constantly negotiated. That requires a prepared opponent to mediate the truth, so the role for the NEG will always outweigh. Piece of point. Presumption. Their deployment of trans-magical thinking is a top-down dicta rather than a genuine, honest openness to the world and its possibilities if they are not allowing us to negate it. Second, navigating unions. Debating this res makes us better at organizing unions, regarding the floors and allocating for your community. It also makes us better at avoiding unions if you think those are bad. This is extremely approximate and relevant. Corporations will exploit Iowa's retreat from labor law. They will illegally discriminate against uninformed workers. That's found evidence that just said no words about in the 2AC. Many of us are about to enter the workforce, and this can literally be the difference between getting raised and getting healthcare or not, which will be impacted out in the 1 and R. Okay. They don't get to say truth testing bad with this AF. You say truth testing is not a great argument, but it makes so much sense against this AF because Iowa doesn't know if they're being manipulated or not by power structures absent a prepared opponent that can tell them that they are wrong. New AFs can be predicted via the topic. This is only a DA to them because their interpretation is totally unpredictable, and same bagging is bad because it favors the AF. So the NEG teams won't do it because the 2ER gets the final word. Obviously, other forms cannot solve our impact. We've spent so much time prepping for the NDT because there's nothing else like debate. Okay, fairness is our second impact. Winning should stem from evidence, familiarity, return prep, and skill. Their interpret disconnects the victory from those factors. It makes it literally impossible to be next since they speak first, choose the terms of debate, and reward themselves for endorsing their own theory of power and how society operates. It outweighs one, it is the meta impact. Every decision made debate presumes fair evaluation. You can't conclude that fairness is bad or that transphobia outweighs fairness without presuming your role as a neutral arbiter. It's why you're flowing, constraining your biases, and vote for arguments you don't personally believe in it. If you flip the coin and just voted on whose shoes you like better, then both teams would be very upset. If fairness is bad, then you should arbitrarily vote NEG while agreeing with every position that the AF made. Second, participation. Winning is not the only reason we're here, but it is
indispensable. Knowing the AFF can evade research forms big incentives for card cutting travel, because the whole process of research would be totally Sisyphean. If you read Kant, we'd pull up Kansas L's Team Hub and cook you on it. So obviously you have an incentive not to do that. If you don't want to win, then just vote next. I don't want to end my career in this room. I don't care if okay, now the AI cannot solve fairness because we don't care about fairness for AI because it's not sentient. And also this is incredibly transphobic. Vote next to reject your appeals to AI. Sherman and 25. ChatGPT, economic and consensus, outdated terminology, infrastructure about trans identity, search topic, found trans people, promoted inspiration, adopted, transphobic narratives, even going to far as workplace, transphobic humans fail to recognize deeper meanings within problems or contest problematic questions, and thus legitimating such. Independently, this demonstrates the unsustainability of their interpretancy after thought, held responsible for their representations. Okay. Now, they said cooperative incentive or performance is sad. Nothing about our deployment on topicality was transphobistic, have a high bar because that was a competitive incentive stuff. I said above, evaluating trade misogyny on the line is far worse because we have potential teams that are good at debate can justify their instances of trade misogyny, and bad teams get away with, or bad teams get punished for not doing such bad things. So it means you should, if we did such a bad instance of trade misogyny, then you should just vote AFF now. If it was that bad, then we need to end the round. But if it's not, then it clearly cannot outweigh fairness because both teams are still trying to get the ballot, and that which precedes that question, fairness is universal because Iowa equally relies on it, and if they don't, then they don't need it to be flowing into ER at all, and you can just vote neg for no reason.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Alright. You made one warrant for like why we clearly care about fairness too, and that was because we follow speech times. I follow speech times because they'll stop the round if I don't. Why does that prove I care about the warrants?
Why would you now they stop the round? Because you want to win.
Because
you also
I
broke
wanna,
your AFF.
I'm sorry, wait, no, but
spreading.
Zach, this is the problem because now that's an assumption you made that because I want to win, not because I want to continue to have this discussion. How do you know? Again, that is the only reason.
If you don't want to win, then just tell the judges that.
Sorry,
and they can vote.
and you said flowing. I mean, I flow because I want to understand your arguments and make sure I don't mishear you. Why does that prove?
Why do you
I really
identify
care about
dropped
that?
arguments? Why do you say vote on this because Kansas dropped it?
Wait,
Why
when
did you
have we
break a
done
new
that
AFF?
in this debate? And
You were like
top of the-
you were like they dropped the
furthermore-
definition of CBR.
Hold on, and
They dropped a theory of
furthermore,
power.
and furthermore, we had a new AFF. We had a competitive incentive not to disclose it, but then we did anyway.
You
Why
disclosed
did
also
we
have
do
a
that?
We disclosed our new app before.
We also have an incentive
Okay,
to say
yeah,
the
why
thing.
did y'all do
So you
that?
could say this now, so we couldn't say this argument, right?
Why?
Like,
Wait, no,
for the
wait,
exact same
why did
reason.
y'all disclose y'all new tab?
So it would be better for clash reasons, like
Yeah.
our so we can win
So
the
we
debate.
better
have
for class.
cooperative incentives. So we have cooperative incentives to participate
To win
in
the
class
debate.
house.
Better
Because
the
if
discussion
you
and a
didn't
better
if you
clash.
didn't disclose, then we would say you have clearly competitive incentive to do that. So you're clearly disclosing, so we can't. make
How
it.
do you know
This
that
is
that
so
true?
contrived.
If, you're
This
do-
is like
if you don't
this-
want to win, just tell
This-
everyone
this,
that, and
this,
it's
this
fine.
feels like the starting from presumption of a common sense and then mapping that onto us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the
Do you disagree that
later
you don't want to win?
on the flow you said our interp solves our offense. The community crafted the res. What community? How did they craft the res?
Every debater got to vote. Every school got to vote on the topic. That's the community I'm talking about. Like every
The
debate.
debater got to vote on the wording of the resolution.
The schools voted on which resolutions they wanted.
Yeah.
That's not what happened. Counterinter.
We had a democratic
Why don't
process.
we meet our
that turned the topic.
counterinter?
Because to
What?
believe, to suspend your disbelief, you have to believe that's a good idea, which requires belief in the suspension of disbelief. It's kind of our arguments about why
Sorry.
coherence is, your case of
Yeah,
coherence
alright,
is
wait.
self-defeating.
Did you understand the 2AC as all? You gotta explain this more to me because we haven't said belief bad. We said belief is good. I don't know why we don't.
You
use
said you
counterenter.
suspend your disbelief.
Yes,
We were saying
suspend
that.
disbelief. We say disbelief is bad. Disbelief is an antonym. Why don't we meet?
You were saying our definitions of CPR are so bad and we should not use them.
What? Okay.
We're saying if you
Sure,
have your
sure.
own definition, that means
That's
take
it's okay. Like,
whatever, no matter
Um,
what, you have to make a coherent argument that coherence is bad. Which
TBA
relies
movie
on the
about
former.
unions. What's your case next to that?
Unions are bad.
Unions
are
are bad?
transphobic. Unions
What does
are
that-
bad for the economy.
Do to engage with the movie?
Like you get to weigh reasons why the movie demonstrates why
How do
unions
you
are
weigh
good.
the
We
movie
could-
versus an extinction impact?
Well, you get to use your movie to say unions are good, and then we debate about whether unions are good or bad.
Okay, so I can use the movie as only the endpoint, but you don't have to engage with it. That makes sense. Clearing up the
same-
winning
same
thing.
with you.
Ballot is an inevitable part of the debate, but that doesn't mean it's only competition. So they blow that up.
Okay. The order is the folk politics K, the nostalgia pick, and then case.
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
Yeah, the folk politics K, the nostalgia pick, and then the case finish.
Are you answering the overview first or extending an argument?
Overview first. I guess to some extent that's extensions of arguments, but I just moved the arguments on extending up to answer. Okay.
Okay, pick case.
Yep.
Cool. Good.
Okay. Panel, we all good? Awesome.
The folk politics K can see the permutation just to test the competition. We do not get this K against the F, which is a core negative ground, which was on the T sheet. That means all of the perm tested competition means that all of the disadds to the alternative equally apply to the F because they said they're comparable political models. They also reason to reject the argument of the team because we are no longer advocating for it. Now the nostalgia pick. Concede we do not get picks. Picks are not bad and they do not remove or negate theoretical clash. They are key to test the necessity of different inclusions of AF scholarship in the videos the AF chose to, and the video clips the AF chose to include in their movie. It's also reciprocal because the AF presented a method and we took them up on a key stasis point in that method, independently justified against new AFs. Picks bad is there a theoretical reason to reject the argument of the team if you conclude there's a violation. But we will extend the nostalgia term. The 2AC here was entirely defensive and the 1C presented this as offense both against solvency and their presentation itself. Our Bennett evidence is great. Nostalgia oversimplifies the past insofar as Gray relies on, quote, changing the past. In 2AC cross-sex, they are entirely unable to change the past in a way that is beneficial for trans life as long as they do not engage with the subtle nuances of trans life itself. Our evidence says that their project smooths over the bumps and jagged edges of life, which means that they erase important historical archives of trans activism, important aspects of trans life that were negative and defining, and that their political method is entirely insolvent insofar as they are rewriting history to only be about the good aspects of it. Yes, there is a link. This is established during 2AC cross-examination. Their remembrance of the good times, quote, conveniently forgets the struggles, heartaches, and complexities in trans life. This is made abundantly clear by Gray's response in 2AC cross-sex. The video included memories that Gray thinks fondly of, that they were, quote, easy to access, and were just, quote, sitting around. The impact of this is, quote, blurring the lines between reality and romanticized versions of history, and causes yearning for something that never truly existed for the value of trans life, which was impacted out above. Case. Okay. The impact of view is either structurally incorrect or impossible for them to solve. First, the elimination impact is incorrect. They themselves said that people are acting magically in the status quo and that they are actively not transphobic. This is actually killer, and I don't know why they conceded it. They don't know, these people that were interviewed do not know who the hell Preciado was. They definitely have not rejected the meaning of all words ever, and they certainly did not watch Iowa's movie. That means it's neg on presumption because the AF is either entirely unnecessary to substantiate good trans life, or the showing of the movie and introduction of the 1AC and evidence and poems, it's alone enough is enough to make people think magically. Second, the disbelief impact is also wrong. It was answered by the overview above, and they actually make disbelief way worse, which will be below. The role of the judge is to vote for the team that did the better resolutional debating. That's the entire 2NC. It's impossible to reject all tech and truth in your decision calculus because Iowa equally plays into the rhetoric whenever they introduce disadds, material reasons the all is bad, or introduce theoretical arguments about how they don't think the pick is good for clash and debates, which requires technical debating, and they have conceded that technical debating itself is good. Now, 1NC1 was the erasure turn. Iowa swung and entirely missed when answering this in 2AC and in 2AC cross-sex. You should reject them on face for the exclusion of and lack of community engagement in the first place. The movie itself does not get them out of this. They dropped that the 1AC itself enacts performative erasure of black argumentation by shrinking down every instance of black argumentation or black studies in the 1AC to 5-point font and not highlighting them. Our insert is not gray. Go do blackface. Our insert is your magical world of trans. This should probably not be a whites only space. They archived history of trans in the 1AC and did not include a single black person. This is offense. It turns the AFS project into a racist tool to maintain white trans exceptionalism in the face of black folks, and black trans folks are doing most of the heavy lifting, which was a conceded argument. It's also magnified by the nostalgia turn on the pick. Their nostalgic vision of trans history leaves black trans women like Laverne Cox or Marsha P. Johnson completely out of it. Framework does not answer this. CBR can include black women, and our links are exclusively about the invocation of the 1AC itself. There's not a pathology to decide if transness is too individualistic to include the history of black trans women. Then you should reject Iowa on face because their vision of transness erases history. Subpoint B is the AF is collective. No AF is collective. What in the world is this about? They can have a vision of transness or include scholarship, or just not put every time the word black appears in the 1AC down in 5-point font. Now they think magically stuff, and the Pollock evidence was extended above, which answers the broad theory of power and impacts of the AF. Now, affect proper. They've said that their affect is a collective theory. Our 1NC Sherwin evidence answers this and says it's impossible to be broadly applied, and they've conceded this dysfunctionally. There's neurological uncertainty means that using it as a heuristic is a bad tool for action because affect theory is a catch-22. It simultaneously evades understanding and manipulates behavior with endless effectiveness. Lack of explanatory power means deciphering the impact of affect in debate or in the world proper through our organizing is completely impossible. Metaphors about emotional pathogens fail to overcome thresholds of explaining what it means to be capable of meaning. All of that is the one and Sherwin evidence which zeroes the case. Now, extend the possivant term. The only argument is that this is a non sequitur because our evidence does not say the word trans. It's a critique of the idea that language does not mean anything or has no meaning itself. Our evidence says that's problematic both because it's inherently analogous to and supportive of radical conservatism. It draws on the Bush administration who quote played with language to legally justify torture to sidestep the Geneva Convention. Torture became quote intense interrogation to avoid the statutory internal legal restrictions. Our evidence is amazing on the question of the direction of the link, and the only argument is that not our argument. It certainly is. Conservative hardliners point to critical theorists' analogy of language to academically justify their word games. Our possible evidence is explicit, even though the 1AC's conclusion was it might be anti-sovereignty in war. It's spun by the right to mean the opposite, meaning that they have functionally conceded that their method gets completely co-opted by the right. Their arg is because there is no relationship between sign and signifier. We should just throw our hands up and accept that the world is ununderstanding. If Dick Cheney or Karl Rove felt particularly constrained by a law or restriction, then they would want Iowa themselves on their side to find the most fluid and expansive or unrestrained definition possible to justify conservatism. The impact is escalating sovereignty, sovereign violence, and unrestrained militarism, which was explained above. This is both a link turns the app and an external disapp because it proves the 1AC unleashes militarism.
We had 9:30. What was it?
9:35.
Start the black.
You got that, right?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. I'll do this. 607. I will go summon the judges.
It's entertaining. It's fun.
Kansas, can I just like steal y'all's stand because it's the correct date for me?
Yeah, go for
Yeah.
it.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm sure you remember back like our day, they had to like ink your resume. But yeah, I hope that like the new move and new increase and everything is good and like intuitive enough and it's pretty cool.
One, two, three, four, five. Yeah, perfect. Case. Nostalgia. Briefly.
Case nostalgia framework.
Yes.
Sorry, say it again.
Case. Nostalgia. Framework. Okay.
Truth is a regime of epistemic labor within which transit cannot be verified. Between truth and transit, something has to go, and the negative has picked the wrong side. 2 impacts outweigh 1 elimination. Hegemonic truths masquerade as common sense to eliminate other realities and smother transition in the crib. Think the right wing's favorite gotcha. What is a woman? The 2NC demands this elimination by calling on your common sense to fill in the blanks by presenting things like Iowa cares about fairness, proven by flowing, as though the warrant has anything to do with the claim. This impact is triggered when you vote on framework. Second is internalization of disbelief. We internalize dysphoria mundis, the disbelief that says it's us and not the world that must change. It's why trans women like Sarah McBride self-segregate out of bathrooms of public life, and why they tell us the problem was not with debate but with us, which turns advocacy skills because we'd rather detransition or go stealth than use skills to fight for rights or CPRs with a vote affirmative to accept the invitation to think heretically with us. Transmagical thinking is epistemic labor that rewrites the past, present, and future to say that things have not always been like this, even in debate, that you don't have to live like this, even if you're cis. Suspend your disbelief. The movie was a dropped aesthetics argument, not an affective one. When you felt something from the images and music, that's a sense of a different comment outside dysphoria moody's impasse the signals you were already thinking heretically, but the one that sees demand for verification stopped it in this tracks. Magical thinking, status quo, non-starter. Other people can change minds, prove solvency because our offense is at the level of this debate. Truth certainly cannot do it. Role of the judge, suspend your disbelief. They misflowed it, so we certainly meet our role of the judge as a heuristic for how you evaluate arguments at the level of aesthetics, because both truth and tech are operations of power that shut down magical thinking before it starts. That is our elimination impact. It beats subjectivity because they have that one debate can't shape it to subjectivity, just that it shouldn't. Better resolutional debating was their answer. Impact turn begs what better and debating mean. They smuggle the common sense prevalence that performance is in tech and that the app is not resolutional. Debate as a communication activity. When they see communicated a set of feelings which they have failed to answer, concluding otherwise links to our disbelief impact. Don't compartmentalize feeling from tech because those feelings are how we know we're trans, denying them chooses truth over trans. In the epistemic war, the erasure turn, it is the erasure turn fundamentally dropped every relevant answer. First is that framework links horror. Every card that they have highlighted is a counter interpretation that we have said we should engage with, and they have said no to on the framework debate. So they certainly link harder. Bo is talking in the context of what trans engagement with Black thought should look like, which is what the 1EC delves into. The other quote is the context of the UNT definition that we highlighted. Their invocation of Marsha B. Johnson, Laverne Cox is weird. It's an instrumentalization of trans women past to justify a return to hegemony now. But those two Black trans women in particular are always invoked to make magic for everybody else, which is parasitic as fuck. If you go for this, we will destroy you on it. We have read an entire book about this, what Gil Peterson wrote. This is consumptive. It does nothing for those women participating in erasure, which is why it would be worse if we would do it. Finally, magic is not an elimination. That's why the 1AC was an invitation to think with. So it's not mutually exclusive. And also the 1AC was about Grace white women. Affect, not really about affect, but neurological uncertainties. Our argument might not understand or be able to explain technically how this works, but you caught a feeling. Language has meaning. We didn't say things have no meaning. We said meaning is relative to power, which is why I call her love and diction. You don't need truth in order to do fucked up shit. Things can always be spun with right, big if true and inevitable, big if they're escalating sovereign violence arguments. Nostalgia. Value that never existed for trans life is the critique that we have made. Value always existed for trans life. By changing the past, the future is malleable. We did not always feel happy in the past. Sometimes we felt sad. This is the plea towards this belief that trans history cannot have pleasure with pain because the past of trans people ought not to find it otherwise now, which means that they cannot solve this framework. Debate is in crisis. The organizing principle of stasis has failed to come to terms with critical debate and the inevitable transition of norms. They know their model is untenable, uncreatable, which is crisis, but they still insist on elimination, appealing to a violent, common sense distinction. The polite and procedural elimination of dissent through coded rhetoric of fairness and clash to cultivate disbelief in the possibility of debate's transformation by homogenizing its past, present, and future into a singular coercive trajectory of policy plan as stasis. So T can never be negotiation because the negotiation does not end with one side. Project CC2 exists, which answers their model's argument that stasis is enforced through a power war on trans. It's like how they see trans is always beyond politics and eliminate conversations about gender to return to business as usual, which proves that stasis is a failed solution to dysphoria moody. That's Buckner, Snaza, and Preciado. 2C overview, group it. Fairness and clash are downstream of our core argument. Framework does not observe stasis, but attempts to coercively produce it through the violent elimination of numerous, vibrant, critical realities, which imbues you with an elimination of common sense. You only have shorthand of flow to 2C because you watched the stasis be enforced so many times and never produced. The entire overview presumes exportability of a normative model, but Funwell Ahmed, your ballot cannot produce stasis, just the illusion of it. In this debate, because framework is non-performative speech. Turner, I know you're with me on this page at least. It cannot bridge the gap between what it promises and what it delivers. Mind the gap, because in that gap is dysphoria moody, the feeling debates crisis. Like, this is all wrong, but we can never change it. Voting negative internalizes that anxiety of a crumbling order of debate, but refuses to acknowledge the cooperative incentives and voluntary limits of critical debate. Competition is overdetermined by cooperative incentives, which makes ardent attachment to debate a healthy and link turns the 2C overview. Truth is overdetermined by power is done on case. Your ballot should be a referendum on how we relate to the impasse between critical and plans debates. Kansas's claim that they have 15 definitions of CBR in their tubs is exactly what I mean. There's a ton of definitions. Framework has never limited them out. Negation buries your head in the sand, but the AFF suspends framework disbelief in favor of a feeling, the magically impossible act of debate's transition in that dysphoria moody and link turn negation, which is their terminal to ground. They do not have a monopoly on clash, but their self-proclaimed competitive desires have compelled them to run away from clash and embody the lack of clash they fearmonger about by ignoring 2AC's critiques of the invitation to criticize the AFF theory method of performance. Fairness is axiomatic, is never a winner and unpersuasive given debate's evolution, which has been unfair and unpredictable since its inception, but grown through the heresy of small moments like your ballot that insist another debate is possible and revise coordinates of what is real and fair. 2C Snaza conceded. Remember Candy Darling, she called her happiness into being, and you can too. Teams ignore and swear the topic assumes common sense is so hegemonic that you already agree with them about what the topic is. Different schools have different definitions. Is a concession of our argument. Counterinterprets aren't things we have to meet or whatever, but other readings of the topic that are crushed to actualize their stasis. Interpretation is secondary to subjectification, which is why. So you should not universalize common sense. Think Long Beach understanding rights is extra legal. UNT thinking workers, trans aesthetics, framework relies on your disbelief. Some of you might predict and prepare differently, but we have evidence people do. Group the TVA and switch side. It's a mechanism of stasis that enjoins us to self-segregate out of K debate and into the rights AFs like Sarah McBride does with bathrooms and sports. But switch side, if they made it as AF offense, fairness paradox and axiomatic is above, but the AI card is the logical outcome of their model about tech, which is why it looks at them and never us. T-turns case and solves the search of truth. There's a problem with their beliefs. It can't, but the fantasy it can. Sanctions elimination along the way. We don't care about fairness, beating cross-sex fairness. The medical straight is wrong because tech and truth are operations of power and
AI isn't transmisogynist.
AI is not transmisogynist. It's down above. Ballot pick relies on disbelief, and it's not identity negation. It's a critique of your reading of framework. I did that above, right? Okay. Oh, 5 times.
Turner, that wasn't a call out. That was just an appeal to you being a theory nerd.
Vote neg to maintain a dialogue between two participant opponents that can adequately test the AF's ability to reject universal truth claims. Their theory of truth is a reason that only one prepared class can solve the case. So running a straight turn in the case that's actively bad at filtering through truth to top of debate is far better. That's when the 2ER waxes about the theory of power. It's the only reason to vote negative. First, clash. It's key to magical thinking. Zero defense in the 1ER. The 1AC said there's always multiple overlayer truth that need to be constantly negotiated about. That requires a prepared opponent to mediate that truth, so a roll for the negative will always outweigh this is presumption on truth testing. They have imposed truth on us by asserting a theory of power, defining CBRs in the way they did. Iowa could be manipulated by power structures they don't even know. So it would be dangerous to presume the AFF is true when it was broken. You only have 30 minutes to scrape KU back files for response. You could not conclude that truth is bad and still vote AFF because you thought it was true. They equally linked to their K or of tech by identified job arguments in the 2ER. Second, external impact totally drop. Clashing over unions makes tangible improvements in debaters' lives. We get more informed on how to bargain on how salaries and life-saving healthcare. That's fair evidence. It's a tiebreaker in case both sides have offense on true stuff. What this is outweighs on like literal your ability to survive because healthcare is key to that, and they just totally drop that. Debating over that stuff makes you better at attaining that stuff. Third, tech over truth makes me more safe. They drop that the alt is biased. Judges go rogue and arbitrarily vote against minority teams for no reason despite them technically winning the debate. They have zero explanation for they're good on tech is imperfect, but zero explanation for why the alternative is any better. If judges are biased, they should not be internalizing debates and or making arbitrary decisions. Their model means that we internalize judge decisions as true, which creates violent attachment to debate wins and increases trans burnout. USFG means 3 branches, and CBRs means a government project protected right for workers to negotiate with their employer. Iowa's understanding of the topic deletes the role for the negative. They have no defense of any of our standards. First, limits, 0 words. Any debater can make their own movie, change their conception of how they relate to their identity, change debate practice to mediation, strikes, etc. No tune can ever be prepared, and the AFF is infinite prep, so we can never engage in their discussion. Second, ground. The AFF is not controversial. It's a truth claim. It's like we should not always believe what's higher authority tells us that's a truth claim that the AFF can never disagree with. There's not a two-sided dialogue. They drop the ground out ways because the debate requires saying no, and that just cannot exist in their model of debate, which means that we come to false conclusions about the truth claims of things. Okay, now the line by line debate is sustainable. It's not in crisis. We bold claims require bold evidence, and they have not read for this. We all we need to win is that we can go for T and win it. Then debate is sustainable. The top of the 1ER is a lot of buzzwords that are not people to debate. We don't need to win that all PFs go away. Just that we can go for T when we win it. First T is negotiation. No links all of their offense. This is huge. We say this is what the topic means. The 2AC then says, hey, we think this is what the words mean. The judges decide who is more persuasive and give us feedback. So we've had multiple team debates with Iowa this year. We've won and lost one each, and now we're back at the negotiating table again. We don't think voting neg means all chaos stop existing, or that we all think that our definition is right, which means we advance to the next round to negotiate with another team. Second, remember, the 1AC themselves claim to define CBR as our definition. It's actively engaging with their definition and contesting it. 1AC Crossix said that we need to be testing the AF's method in theory. This is what topicality is. It is testing their method by disagreeing with their definition of CBR. Third, they drop there's zero link to gender. They're posting definitions on what CBR means. It means has literally zero effect on your transition. It's terminal defense. So their theory of power, because not all truth is the same. I.e., you can agree that truth claims about gender are bad, but that does not have zero implication on whether truth claims about CBRs are bad. Our point about 50 definitions of CBRs proves that we need to have a debate. We have how to decide which interpretation is best, other than topicality debates. That's the whole point. It's a good attempt to engage with the AFF and disagree with their conception of CBRs. Okay, fairness, I'm not going for it, so this defense doesn't apply. But the truth paradox just does apply. The 2R will assert we drop something, and then appeals that when they do that, they're appealing to the power structure of debate norms, i.e., drop arguments are true, proving that I will link to their own K. Topical debate solves teams running to the margins because you can always get Ks of state, CBRs. They can say ban unions that guaranteed neg ground under our model, which they just drop from the 2 and C. We agree the topic has multiple meanings. Again, it can mean different things to different people, but we think our definition is best, and we are winning that as key to class. Okay, the TVA, it guarantees CBRs to all workers. It's not meant to solve their dissets. It just meant to demonstrate that Iowa links to their own stuff, because Iowa has unilaterally imposed a rejection of unions, which limits trans-magical thinking by denying radical potential of unions always, no matter what. So factor. This is even more often for why our topical debate can solve trans-magical thinking by unlocking the potential of unions and allowing them to have to advocate for more things. You cannot reject unions without appealing to the truth claims that they are criticizing, which means that there's no reason why any of our debates are anti-educational, and they just solve their stuff way better. Okay, the case. Top level, the 1ER has legitimately dropped presumption. There was a sub-point 1 to answer the elimination standard. They themselves said that people are acting magically in the status quo and are actually not transphobic. This is actually killer. They don't know who the hell Preciado is. They definitely have not rejected the meaning of all words ever. And they certainly did not watch Iowa's movie. That means it's negative presumption because the AFF is either entirely unnecessary or they're showing the movie and introduction to the 1EC evidence and the poems alone is enough to make everyone think magically. That means that truth is not always overdetermined by power, because you can filter it throughout yourself, and that's maximized by clash, because they drop it. It makes you better at processing information and figuring now what is right or wrong. That means the ballot is not key to solve elimination. And the 2 RT answered all this offense about the interrelation of disbelief. Okay, the role of judge is to vote for the team that debated better on the resolutional impacts, and warrants are explained a T. Anything else is kind of be arbitrary, and deletes clash, which we've impact turned about above. Okay, erase your turn. This is independent NEG ballot. Even if we conclude T is bad, you can still vote NEG here. Iowa has archived history of train system in the 1EC and did not include a single black person. This turns the Ask Project into a racist tool to maintain white trans exceptionality and faces black folks and exclude black trans people from Iowa's idealistic vision of history. This argument is also magnified by the nostalgia turn on the pick, which will extend here. Iowa has presented a movie of their understanding of trans states along with their relationship to it. This video itself only depicting white trans people versus black trans women like Lorraine Cox and Marsha P. Johnson. The second link is when you see evidence. Iowa shrunk the word black down 5-point font every time it appeared, even if the link, we're not asking Dre to do blackface, but they included other people that were not great in the movie, and none of them are black. Framework does not link harder to this. They drop 2 links and them say black people conceive of their topic differently than the race. Does not justify their vision of trans passive futures. We did not instrumentalize trans women. They linked to this by not to us, Laverne Cox and Marsha P. Johnson being called upon to do magic in the past is recent. Their contributions to trans should not be recognized, not denied and embraced like the movie did. Lastly, if AFF fails to linking, this is cowardice. Whenever Iowa said their communications are formed through how you feel about the 1EC, how else could you determine the truth is bad? It's that the catch-22 in the Iowa's job is simultaneously in a base understanding and manipulates behavior with endless effectiveness. 607. You good? Done. Yeah, okay. We're good. like. Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And that's what people. That's what people want.
No, I'm on defense.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fair enough.
Cool. Case framework, of course. Whenever you're good, Tara. Good. Okay. I'll thumbs up. The negative lost his day when they conceded to IC Ahmed, a hegemonic truth DA, and a sequencing claim on the role of the judge. I'm gonna do the role of the judge at the top. Suspend your disbelief. Debate is in crisis. This is the 80th NDT, and for 30 years we've had debates like these that have failed to adapt to the collapse of stasis and the transition of our rhetorical models. We are at an impasse. You feel like debate must evolve, but you really don't believe it will. This is dysphoria moody. The negative has chosen to ignore this impasse, fighting as a rearguard defense of the normative desirability of a long disappeared model, but the 200s mishandled our framing of an AFF ballot on case. Treat our suspension of disbelief arguments kind of like a refusal alt. Rejecting the disbelief framework cultivates in you as the first step in the generation of collective alternatives because the demands for a perfect model freezes our aesthetic and affective capacities for them to think before they could ever happen. This is our argument about how magical thinking can give you a sense of a different commons. You may not know what the movie said, but you know how it felt. You will vote on that feeling because in an argument about what debate could look like that has exceeded the technical debating of the negative. That feeling is how you know another commons, another debate, another life is possible. Every time you compare arguments on the flow, that feeling should remind you that we can't live like this, but neither do we have to. Voting affirmative is an invitation to think wildly and magically. Suspending the disbelief framework attempts to treat us to join us in the epistemic labor we've named heresy. They've conceded debate's evolution has been unpredictable and unfair, but it has moved through a heresy of small moments like your ballot that insist another debate is possible and revises the coordinates of what is real and what can be discussed over. That's 1AC Harlock and 2AC Snazza. Remember Candy Darling. She called her happiness into existence against all reason. You too should choose this and choose to break the impasse of dysphoria moody. Kansas OW has not answered the argument about world making anesthetics. It's not a blueprint for procedure or what debate could look like. It's a method for finding one that the negative has provided uniqueness for by refusing. Our argument is that all of us has already seen glimpses of what debate could be. The KVK debates that stay with you to these days. The policy debates that have seduced the negative. The clash debates that have shocked you with their deaths. Magical thinking looks like all of those past debates, like the childhood videos in the movie, the kernels of the new order that they render impossible. Case proper. First, Presumption. One error answer and once used unique for presentations of space that magical thinking can change minds is a dry run of solvency, nothing more. Erasure. When you evaluate the erasure debate, it must happen through three lenses. First, embodiment. I am a white woman, not a black woman, which is why, insofar as the ONC was written from my experience, I do not represent myself as black. Two, comparativeness. Hypervisibility outweighs. Black women are hypervisualized as magic figures of another future for white people who parasitically attach themselves to representations of, which is why 2NC and 2NR are giving you names of two very famous black trans women. Laverne Cox, who is constantly hypervisualized and literally the figure of the trans tipping point on Time magazine, and Marsha B. Johnson, who's constantly invoked on things like Target t-shirts to represent radicalism, including either of them suggests that is the creation of them as radical signifiers of a world to come without doing anything for them. Three, contextual. One see evidence to re-highlight and talk about blackness is twofold. One is Bill Larson's article about the compounding debt of black and debate and trans debate traditions, and two is UNT's definition of worker as requiring trans aesthetics. For you to cast a negative ballot on T in this debate, you would have to commit the erasure by determining KVK debates that Bill is talking about in this re-highlight are undesirable, and T would be better. For you to conclude CBRs are illegal, you'd have to say fuck UNT's intro about how they think about trans aesthetics and blackness. That's bad. Final argument was affect fails. This was largely unapplied, and insofar as we're winning claims about affective as both structural and also something you felt in this debate, you disregard it. Framework. To win this debate, all we have to win is a moderate risk of three arguments. We are far ahead. NDT elims mean you should read cards. We have cards on all three, and they have cards on zero of them. First, policy blind stasis is descriptively false, which was all of the definition presented about how there is no current understanding of debate, proven by the diaspora of critical interpretations. Two, your ballot cannot actualize stasis. That's 2AC on it. Three, trying to make stasis violent is violent because it requires modes of internalization. I'm going to do our case impact here. One error impact calculus on disbelief makes this offense. Truth is corrosive transit. Internalization of demands for proper engagement models or limits cause trans women to believe that the problem is us, not the world, and neither can change. That outweighs. It causes us to self-segregate out of public life like Sarah McBride, or freeze our transitions. Turns advocacy skills and zeros clash because disbelief orients us away from using those skills or research. For example, all of the stuff like going stealth all proves that their clash does not involve in the best versions of negation or furthering our argumentation, but rather in a violent mode that turns burnout back onto them. The first argument I'm going to do proper is Ahmed, because they had zero words on in the 2NR, and is just a fucking straight turn. Non-performative speech is a undercovered framework makes a clash less likely. It's non-performative speech that intentionally calls in the lack of clash and its invocation rather than engagement, which is either so click to kick the picks and the K that I undercovered into 2 and C, or why they'll say engage with scabs, good and cross-sex, but then say our answer to the TVA with unions good. We won't have to engage with the movie that way. That undergirds our theorization of stasis being false. Every
Because
turn
they're prepared to be unprepared.
because they're always prepared to be unprepared, and when we're winning a descriptive claim that stasis cannot exist, that alternate terminal
So our argument is that that framework and the rewarding of framework makes clash less likely. Insofar as they are going for a ballot, that framework is good clash. Here is now the impact turn to framework as good clash. There you go.
Framework as good clash is wrong. We're winning the elimination of critical realities, the hegemonic elimination of truth. Stasis is false, and I do not need to win an alternative model to win it because we're winning its imposition here was bad. It begins from a premise that we have deviated. The no stasis argument I articulated above proves that different communities predict and prepare differently. That is the point of our definition debate. They simply assert illegal definitions are more predictable and empirically false, saying the desirable is a non sequitur. Now, the Buckner evidence done above extending so far as how the imposition of that stasis is bad. TVA answered by the fact that it's simply unresponsive to the affirmative. It can neither solve for the offense in the context of this debate, nor can it solve for them actually engaging, which they conceded. The negation key, all answered above, insofar as we have proven that their mode of negation was intentionally choosing not to. Burnout answered above, limits only we have evidence about what people actually do in the face of critical debate. Conceded cooperative incentives check means stasis is not intrinsic to their impact, so you can't vote on it. Case disproves we are all searching for truth. That is the crux of our impact claim. We say debate cannot do that, but it can embrace the beautiful multiplicity of the other eyes. T is a negotiation wrong. One side doesn't get eliminated in a negotiation. Truth testing answered above.
The role for negation is proven by the litany of KVK critical debates that happen in this high school. You have to conclude those things are bad, and there's no truth testing because the absent impact.
Yep. Good debate.
Good debate.
Debate. Nick.